This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. And boy, this podcast is going to sound festive this week. The whole nation is jumping aboard the Detroit Lions bandwagon. And it's nice to see. It's happened before. It's not the first time that the support for the Detroit Lions has been high, but it's the first time when you hear outside perspective where you don't chuckle and go, haha, they don't know shit. I remember a time where a nationally prominent writer predicted the Lions to win the Super Bowl, and we basically fell out of our chair laughing because it wasn't realistic. But when you see the moves that general manager Brad Holmes was able to make, stealing free agents when their negotiations didn't fall through, it just has lent to everybody being festive, positive. You've had basically the pundits at ESPN, NFL Network, being more comfortable saying the Lions can potentially be that team that can win and potentially get to the Super Bowl. So it's been a fascinating couple weeks, highlighted by obviously really Brad Holmes identifying and targeting. After watching the film, probably they all got together and said, God damn, all these receivers keep getting open. The third most yards given up by a defense in the passing game was the Lions' piss-poor secondary. So they said, we cannot keep watching this. This is terrible, the miscommunication, the poor execution. So they went out and they said, we are going to not only just get one guy to fix the problem, not just two guys to fix the problem, we're going to get three guys to come in here and handle business. Three guys that, when you turn on the film, have the potential to be Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn guys. So all in all, my reaction to free agency has been very positive. The only questionable move really is just the signing of Alex Anzalone, but that's a role player that the Lions have full trust in. So when it was announced that they basically, in the dead of the night, they got an opportunity to sign CJ Gardner-Johnson because contract negotiations broke down, I was like, really? 1 year, $8 million deal for the player that many felt was the top free agent cornerback left after the early wave of free agency behind Jalen Ramsey? This was great news. And you get him on a prove-it deal where he's going to want to ball out to earn hefty money. I can't say enough good things about him. He plays multiple positions, is around the ball, knows Aaron Glenn's system, ready to come in, handle the slot, handle the outside, handle the safety position if you need him. Perfect signing. And it just goes to show you that when you start to establish yourself in the league, players that you have familiarity with that you want to go grab, they can come to Detroit.
Yeah, this whole free agency period just feels completely different than it did last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. You go back even 10 years. It feels like guys want to come here. It feels like we've talked about the culture being established here. And it really feels like it is. You have guys saying, I'm willing to go to Detroit. I'm willing to go play there, which is a breath of fresh air. Something that we haven't heard, something that we haven't experienced in I can't tell you how long. But it is different. It feels different. Everything feels new. Everything feels like almost like a brand new pair of jeans. They're not quite broke in yet. They're a little bit uncomfortable, but you know that they're going to fit just right after you wear them a few times. That's kind of what this free agency period feels like to me. I'm uncomfortable with this, man. I am uncomfortable with guys saying, I want to go there. Guys basically taking less. You have guys re-signing to stay here and basically taking like a $9 million pay cut just to stay here and stay on the roster. Like, it's bonkers. You've got a general manager who has helped build and cultivate a culture along with the head coach that has guys willing to take less money, guys willing to sign one-year prove-it deals, who are arguably the second best free agent in the entire free agent class. behind Lamar Jackson. And there's even talks and pundits who are saying Lamar Jackson should come to Detroit. I don't want him. I don't think you want him. But it's one of those things where it is different to be the it team. And this team is the new it team. And it really feels like the tide is turning. Like we've talked about the Detroit Lions being the favorite to hold down the NFC North. And it really does feel like it is theirs to lose. It really does feel like it is theirs to take. And whatever it is that they want to do, it is right there in their reach, in their grasp. And like you said, the one free agent signing I think we both kind of scratched our heads at and we're like, you probably could have did better. It really was the Anzalone signing. It was bringing him back in. It was a guy who we were both kind of like, there were a lot of other guys out there. You probably could have did better. But you sit there and you kind of break it down. Who's the linebacker that you wanted? Was it Edmonds? Was that the guy that you really wanted?
Yeah, it would have been nice. Or just hyper focus on the draft. Maybe just move forward and just move on and pick up a linebacker that you trust. But I get it. You don't want to invest too heavily right now based on your contract. That was listen. The Lions were not going to set the market for a linebacker. They're just not doing that. So yeah, the Bears had cash to spend and they had extra in their coffers. So they're like, oh, we want this. Let's go. Let's overpay. Oh, we want this. Let's go. Let's overpay. So maybe Edwards would have been nice as well, but in the end, it didn't work out. So the money allocated to Anzalone, it's fine. Maybe I would have did a 2-year deal, not the full 3. But in the end, NFL is year to year anyway. And guys, you got to pay attention. Brad Holmes is using all the tricks of the trade with voidable years. The interesting note, and we'll talk about it just a little bit later, this upcoming year, a lot of the new additions for the Lions aren't going to cost a lot in the cap. So in a couple years, though, all those prices start to come due, which lends many to speculate, is there a high-priced player that maybe will be off the books, which should be able to sustain an uptick of $25 million in salaries? Maybe it lends to a little subtle awareness of maybe where the organization could head in the future because they backloaded a lot of the deals. In 2 years, 3 years, that cap number goes up. But the salary cap continues to rise. And I think that what at least we can understand is the Lions are handling the cap beautifully by using all the tricks of the trade. So if you can't get the most talented guys, the guys that you're getting are not crushing you. You can go out and still pick up a wide receiver, a veteran if you need to. You still could sign Chark reasonably if he wants to come back.
For sure. And here's the thing. This is what I was trying to get at with the linebacker signing of Alex Anzalone, right? So if I told you there was a linebacker, I'm going to give you two different stat profiles here, and you tell me which one you would prefer. If I could tell you that you could sign a linebacker that had 125 combined tackles, had 1.5 sacks, had 6 pass defended, had 1 interception, and had one forced fumble and 1 fumble recovery. Then you compare that to a guy who had 102 tackles, 1 sack, had 7 pass defended, 1 interception, and no forced fumbles and no fumbles recovered. Who would you take?
You take
probably
the
first guy.
Yeah, 125, yeah.
So that's Alex Anzalone.
That's who it is, yep.
So you ended up getting, like I don't think either one of us really necessarily cared for the deal, but this is a guy who obviously this team believes in. And this team did a good job going out and bringing in impactful guys that they valued from their own roster. Anzalone was one, Isaiah Buggs was one, Kaminsky was one. These are all guys who I think we all kind of agree that if they were to go anywhere else, they'd be impactful guys. They're here. These guys know the scheme, know what to do, and they were impactful guys down the stretch last year. And then you go in and you start adding other pieces. And like you said, to your point, the contracts that are being signed aren't contracts that are going to break the bank. Like they still have money to play with. If there's guys out there that they want to go get, they have the capital in the cap space to be able to go out and get those guys if they want to do that. They are playing. It really does feel like they are playing chess. Everybody else is playing checkers. There is nothing that has hindered or harmed this salary cap, or there's no dead money that is counting against this team. The way that they have structured these deals, the way that they have built this team, it really does feel like whatever it is that they want, they can go out and they can get. And you've got guys willing to come here now. On top of all of that, it really does feel like when you go into the draft, you don't necessarily have to draft guys to play immediately. You can grab guys and kind of add. It really does feel like this team is pretty much constructed before the draft. A lot of times we're going into the draft like, oh man, we've got to address this need, we've got to address that need, we've got to address this need as well. It really does feel like going into this year's draft, you've kind of covered your bases. Yeah, there's a couple positions that are a little bit weak and a little bit light, and they will probably be taken care of with the draft. But it really does feel like you could roll this team onto the field right now, and you're going to get a shit ton of production from a lot of these guys, and you're going to be okay. It really does feel like they have a very strong roster the way it's constructed currently. And again, goes back to Brad Holmes. And look, Brad Holmes has done things in this free agency that have been absolutely surprising. He has done things that have been super impressive. You talked about the secondary being the weakness of this team and just being abysmal. That was the one thing that really harmed this team. It was the Achilles heel of this team last year. It was, if you went and you looked at all the stats and you looked at the breakdowns and you looked at the positional rankings, this team struggled in the secondary. You have completely overhauled your secondary. You have completely redone your secondary. And you went and you got one of the best corners on the market, brought him in. You went out and you brought in another corner who plays really, really well, and you signed him to a one-year prove-it deal that didn't break the bank. And you said, hey, you're coming off injury. Come here. Let's see what you can do. If you can do something, we'll come back, we'll revisit this, and maybe we'll bring you back next year. And then you went out and you got arguably the second best free agent on the market in a surprise deal that I think shocked everybody on a Sunday night when you went and you got CJ Gardner-Johnson, who brings a little bit of attitude, brings a little bit of gusto, a guy who has worked with your defensive coordinator, a guy who has flourished under your defensive coordinator, a guy who is essentially a utility knife on defense, can play corner, can play slot corner, can play nickel, can play dime, can play safety, can play free safety, can play strong safety, can play all over the place. He can do pretty much everything, and he's a little bit mean, and he's got a little bit of an attitude. And we talked about how Jamaal Williams, basically his attitude in the way he was in that locker room and how it kind of rubbed off on the team and how it helped be that cementing foundational piece. I think defensively, you just got your attitude. You just got your identity by bringing this guy in. This guy coming in, he's going to play with a little bit of flash. He's going to play with a little bit of grit. He's going to play with a nasty mean streak. Every now and then, man, you need to get these guys who kind of walk that fine line, walk that edge of being a really good, strong player to maybe being a little bit of a dirty player. And I think that's what you get with CJ Gardner-Johnson. I think that was such an impactful signing, and I think that tells you where this organization is heading and what it's doing. What did the signing of CJ Gardner-Johnson mean to you? Because to me, it was a note of credibility. It checked the box. Like, Brad Holmes is out here doing things, and players recognize, and everybody in the league has now been put on notice.
Yeah, what it signaled to me was this is a perfect fit, and you get him at a perfect opportunity because you realize he was negotiating with the Eagles. He wasn't happy. He probably said, you know what? Give me the most money I can get this year. And he was willing to take a year to come to Detroit. And he's got talent. He can produce, and he's young. And very rarely when we look at lists that are created that indicate who could come to Detroit, and we all say, I want to shop. I want to go get CJ Gardner-Johnson. Because obviously the familiarity with Aaron Glenn, what he understands, and his swagger, and boom, he comes in and he takes the deal. And you just don't go out every day and pick off a defensive back from a Super Bowl caliber team. So it lends to realizing that when you are looking at the Lions, it starts to tell you that win now is starting to creep into the lexicon, that in a win now mode, you're not going to go into the season with two rookie cornerbacks. It's just impossible. And these guys are going to have a hard time because Justin Jefferson can go up there like a Spider-Man and grab the ball with one hand. And if you're going into NFL games with really subpar cornerbacks, you have no chance. And even with elite cornerbacks, the league is set up to protect wideouts and quarterbacks. So at least to give yourself a fighting chance to be gritty and to let your defensive line do some work. It fits perfectly. And then you realize Jerry Jacobs, Kirby Joseph, and Tracy Walker, those are 3 guys homegrown that you can do your own thing with. And then Jeff Okuda, you just say, give us what you got and let's see what we can get. Maybe some trade value at the deadline. We'll see. But you just overhauled your secondary in one foul swoop where we don't have to look at it and be embarrassed by it anymore. So I'm so thrilled. I want to see it. And it opens the door where all the moves Brad Holmes has made, David Montgomery, younger, hungrier version, an established quarterback in Goff. You have the game changer in Swift if he stays healthy. You have a couple defensive linemen that are hungry. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Because it's not just blowing smoke anymore. It's not really hope season when you look at Brad Holmes and he's playing he's playing chess out here during free agency and roster construction, that you can say this is a team that is at least we can reasonably expect them to get to the playoffs. And
absolutely.
When they get there, they're not going to just be happy to be there. They can compete, and they're young and hungry. So this is what we've always wanted. What's impressed me with what they've done in the offseason has been identifying weaknesses and building a team that is not, when they first start to have success, it can be sustainable.
And you look at what they've done in this free agency period, right? You went out and on the offensive side of the ball, guard was a bit of a weakness. Haloti Vaitai was not anything to write home about. That was a bit of a mis-signing, and you kind of got stuck with that contract for the last 2 years. And so you've made the best with it, right? But you went out, and I think we both expect him to be released at some point. You went out and you brought back Graham Glasgow. I think that's an immediate upgrade as far as guard goes, right? You look at running back. Jamaal Williams ended up misplaying his hand, misplayed his cards, ends up leaving. You go out and you get better. You get younger. You get faster. You get a guy who's a little bit more elusive, a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield, a guy who can pretty much do everything and anything that you can ask for a running back. And then you put him behind that offensive line. I expect that to pay major dividends on the offensive side of the ball. Now you flip the script and you go to the defensive side of the ball. You've completely overhauled your secondary. Your secondary was one of the weakest links on this team, and you've completely revamped it with 3 signings. And you go out, you get one of the best cornerbacks, you get another very good cornerback to pair with. You go out and you get a very good safety who is multifaceted in the things he can do and can play all over the field. On top of that, your defensive coordinator absolutely loves him, and they have a great relationship. And then you look at you brought back Alex Anzalone, who your linebacker, he's got familiarity with everybody. It's fine. A guy who had a really nice season last year, and you're looking to capitalize and build on what he did last year. I get it. That signing, I get. You brought back some of your own guys along the defensive line, and Isaiah Buggs, who I think towards the end of the last year got into a groove and really started playing incredibly well and was very impactful. You can't tell me down the stretch of last season, say probably the last 4 or 5 games, that wasn't a guy who showed up every single Sunday. That dude was there constantly wreaking havoc and just messing with people. And that was great. And then you look at John Kaminsky. I don't know if there's a better story than John Kaminsky. This is a guy who basically was on practice squads and basically was like, look, I need a deal. And he just came in, worked his ass off, got promoted from practice squad here to being a starter, and he played an integral role. I think there's a stat floating around in games that Kaminsky played. I think the Lions are something like 9-2. It's something ridiculous like that. Every time he played, they won. So you look at the way that they were able to basically address issues on the offensive side of the ball, which we both feel is the most complete unit on this team. And then you look at what they've done in overhauling basically whole units and whole parts of the team on the defensive side of the ball. It really sets you up for the draft where you can go in, and if you stay at 6, you can do anything you want. You can do whatever floats your boat. Look, I don't necessarily subscribe to drafting a corner, but if you wanted to draft a corner, you could draft a corner. If you wanted to draft a D-end, you can draft a D-end. If you want to draft an interior defensive lineman, you can do that. You can even draft a quarterback at 6, which I think is probably not the best utilization of that draft pick, but it becomes more of an option. It becomes more of a likelihood that you can do that. Going in at 6 with what they've done with this free agent period, Are you okay with them taking that 6th pick overall and investing it in the future in a quarterback for this team? Or would you like them to do something different with that pick? Would you be upset? Would you blow your lid if on draft night it's basically announced at 6 they basically draft Anthony Richardson or they draft Will Levis and basically that's your quarterback of the future, man. That's going to be the guy who's going to take over for Jared Goff. Or would you prefer something a little bit more impactful, a guy who's going to pay immediate dividends for this team?
Yeah, no, having options is so great. Now, would they take the ultimate risk and draft a running back at number 6? I doubt it.
No,
but
get off the running back train.
Listen, more people are hopping on. What are you talking about? Listen. Okay, and I'll just sidebar because we've heard it a lot. When you watch the film, he's a powerful runner that can elude tacklers and has the home run threat. That's the real deal.
Yes.
Look, okay, and here's the other aspect too. When did Goff really ball out? It's when you neutered him. It's when you had him have the baddest running back on the planet in Todd Gurley. Yes, this is Todd Gurley 2.0. This is Goff's guy. This is Todd Gurley 2.0. Give him the ball, neuter Goff, hand it to Amon-Ra, hand it to Bijan, hand it to David, hand it a couple times to your tight end, and you got yourself a superstar quarterback that you can happily pay $40 million to. That's why. Maybe they'll trade back, and the blessing is, to get off the soapbox about Bijan, the blessing is you have the opportunity to have options to trade down, trade up, get Tyree Wilson, get Jalen Carter, maybe have an opportunity to do whatever you need to do to improve the team. After those free agency moves, you now have the opportunity to add add first-round draft picks that are going to help you. So it's a wonderful opportunity that the Lions have presented themselves that is going to be so special that and you could even take a swing at a quarterback. You could even say, Anthony Richardson's our guy, and while you'll get a groan, people will understand it because you got number 18 to swing at the next defensive player that you want. You've added a lot of pieces on defense already, so you can take a swing, and people will understand it. So to have that flexibility, you just know reinforcements are coming, and I can't wait to see what the next step is for the Lions because people are so excited. They have faith. They're talking high and really, too, the window's open. The window is open, guys. Open the window. We've always talked about for 5 years here on this podcast, closing the window, tanking, picks. And now the window finally opens for the Lions to take a shot in 2023 to have a big season. So it's exciting and really a fascinating time to be a supporter of the Lions.
Yeah, no, it really is. This is like I said, it's weird. It's almost uncomfortable being in this situation because we're definitely not used to it. I think as last week kind of wound down and you kind of seen what happened with Jamaal Williams and him ending up in New Orleans, I want to get your take in what you make of the Jamaal Williams situation because you're getting a lot of information, some of it coming from him, some of it coming from the team, and I think somewhere in the middle lies the truth. He basically said that he felt disrespected with the offer that the team gave him. The team reportedly offered him a similar deal to what David Montgomery ended up taking, and I think we both agree David Montgomery is the better back of the two. What's your take on this? What's your make of this? Because you've been in the room, you basically were there when the Lions have come out and said, "Hey, look, we made him a similar offer to David Montgomery. We weren't going to get caught holding the bag if he wanted to go look at other teams." And then Jamaal Williams comes out during his presser in New Orleans, acting a little bit like a showman and is like, "Look, they disrespected me. Okay. They didn't want me at all," which I don't necessarily think was the case. Look, he's going to spin it how he wants to spin it. I want to get your take on it before I add anything that I have any thoughts on it.
Yeah, and it plays to this, okay? Because obviously, what has Jamaal Williams showed you? Okay, now this is not inside information. This is just observing and knowing what you know about Jamaal as a person. I would say that the length of contract and the tone of the negotiation, outside of the money, played a factor because you also got to listen to what he said. He said that the offer they made me was disrespectful and it showed that they didn't want me around like that. So what does that mean? It means that he probably got one call and said, "This is our best offer. Let us know in a couple hours that you want it." So that he wasn't feeling the love. Like, what if you hear from John Kaminsky? Dan Campbell texts him, "I would love to have you on the team. I need you on this team." So you get a sense that maybe Jamaal wasn't getting that same level of text involvement, wasn't getting told, "Hey, We want to build this offense around you continuously. We think that you can do this. Hey, we'll give you 4 years and $24 million and 10 guaranteed. And he looks at it and goes, man, they're treating me kind of like it's a business. I get it. Based on what I've done, I've taken the role you wanted me to do. I've bent over backwards, been the leader, produced at a level that you want me to. You still didn't show me what I would have wanted in terms of security, so I'll just take a deal and continue moving forward. He did get a lot of money guaranteed, like 4 right up front, so he gets a deal. He's fine with it, and obviously now you see, because of how he did at the end of last year, he's going to be a marketing tool for a bunch of companies. Tostitos is one. Obviously, a bunch of other things in the world of anime are going to come his way. So for him, the money aspect of it is not super relevant. It's the intention of like, hey, do you want me around? Do you show me the love? Lions handled it probably very businesslike and said, hey, we're going to offer you 1 year, $6 million, 2 years, 12, and backloaded and do all that kind of, cap stuff. And he's like, man, I can't. And Austin Eckler's in the same boat. And unfortunately, it's not a Jamaal Williams problem. It's a league perception of running backs problem. Austin Eckler's out here banging the can going, I scored 20 touchdowns and 1,600 yards, and I can't get the change? Like, what the hell? And
see, and that tells you where running backs basically slot in, right?
4 to 6 million. That's it.
Stud.
I want Austin Eckler. I'd pay him. I'd pay it.
Austin Eckler is amazing, right? Austin Eckler is basically David Montgomery pumped up on steroids for the last 6 years. Like he is great. I think he scored like 30 touchdowns last year. It's unreal. Like he's like the number one receiver and he's the number one running back in Los Angeles. I always get it mixed up, San Diego and Los Angeles still. Anyways, he's the number one guy in receiving and in running. It's crazy, but it tells you the market for running backs just isn't there. It's almost like they're a dime a dozen, which is why you probably shouldn't draft one in the first round.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right? It's crazy. These running backs don't get no love. And I just think that in the end, Lions got an upgrade and it worked for both parties along the way. So in the end, you go younger and you get a guy that can break tackles, and the Lions get what they're looking for in the parameters of their offense.
Yeah, and look, I agree with you 100%. I really do think that this was one of those things where Jamaal Williams and his agent kind of overplayed their hand. I think him scoring 17 touchdowns last year, I think he thought that it was going to allow him to kind of leverage himself and leverage his next contract and try to get a little bit more than maybe what the market is dictating. And I do feel as though the Lions, look, I don't know what actually transpired in those negotiations, but I do feel like the Lions came to him with a pretty solid offer. And he was like, let me just go check and let me see what's going on. And they had the ability to upgrade, right? And as valuable as Jamaal Williams was in that room, you have the ability to upgrade. The Lions are at a point right now where you need players, you need dogs, you need guys that you can roll out onto the field and who are going to produce at an incredibly high level. And look, Jamaal Williams did a very nice job last year, but you could go get David Montgomery. And look, this is how I feel. Again, I have no insider knowledge. I have no idea what happened with the contract talks. I just want to put that disclaimer out there, right? But I could see the Lions going to Jamaal Williams and basically saying, hey, look, we're willing to give you a $15 million 3-year contract. We'll give you $8-9 million guaranteed. So you know what that means to both of us, right? First 2 years he's here. Third year you could cut him if you want. And he was like, well, let me see what else I can do. Probably feeling he could get a deal similar to what David Montgomery got. And they found out David Montgomery was available. They're like, cool, we'll offer this guy 3 years, 18 mil, because I feel like he's worth that. And look, we will. What's he got guaranteed? Is it 11 or 12 guaranteed? Maybe 18 guaranteed. I don't know what his guarantee is, but that's what they offered, and he took it. So like at that point, you're just moving on. And like I don't think there was any disrespect. I think he just kind of misplayed his hand. I'm assuming that Jamaal Williams, after the year he had, he probably realized like, look, I don't know if I'm going to have another year like this. So I need to cash in right now. And he went to go cash in, and as he was trying to coordinate something else with somebody else, the Lions said, no, we got something better. We're going to go this way. And they just pulled their offer back because he didn't take it. He didn't sign it. So it's just one of those things. I think the market for running backs, and you see it. We just talked about Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler is a beast. It's just not there. It's just not there. Running backs are looked at as a bit of a dime a dozen. Unless you are a guy who is truly elite, I don't think you're going to get the contract you think you're going to get. You look at what Josh Jacobs did last year. Josh Jacobs led the league last year in rushing. And Josh Jacobs, pretty good running back. And he was set to hit the free agent market. They ended up hitting him with a franchise tag and basically capped him at like $10 million. And this is a guy who was looking to really cash in and really get that big contract, get that contract like Saquon. Saquon's another guy. You know, you want to talk about a high draft pick running back. This is a guy who is set to hit free agency, wants to cash in. It's another guy that they hit with the franchise tag because it's $10 million. It's easy to control that. It's easy to compensate for that. You don't have to give them this elaborate, massive contract, and it just tells you where the value of the running back as a position is right now in the NFL. The NFL has transitioned from a very run-forward game to a very pass-heavy game. And I think specifically with the Lions, with Ben Johnson and his offense, as much as they ran the ball, because they ran the ball a ton last year, I think what you started to kind of see down the stretch of last season is you started to kind of see a little bit of the switching of the gears, right? And I think the way this offense is set up for next year, it's probably going to be a little bit more pass heavy. If anything, it'll probably be 55-45 pass to run. And that's just because I think they still want to be very active running the ball because they have such a good offensive line. But I think with the wide receivers that you have on this team, with David Montgomery and DeAndre Swift as your running backs, it's going to be more of a pass offense. It's going to be more of probably a West Coast offense where they're looking to get the ball out into the flats and looking to get guys on crossing patterns. And then eventually you'll take the top off the defense with J-Mo running down the field. But that's how I feel like this offense is constructed for this next phase going into next year. And I'm okay with it. I'm cool with it. I think it's going to be interesting. I think this offense is going to be different than it was last year, and it's just because of the pieces that you have on it. So I think Jamaal Williams kind of hurt himself in overplayed his situation. I want to ask you a question because I think I had a bit of an interesting reaction, and maybe you had the same one. So Sunday night, sitting on the couch, and the news breaks about CJ Gardner-Johnson's contract being signed with the Lions, being a 1-year deal. And it comes across my phone, and I stop, I take a breath, I look up, I look back down because I can't really believe my eyes, what's going on. Take another look up, take another breath, look back down, and I'm like, okay, cool, it's legit. And then you just start getting cascaded with information as it's breaking. Like all of the apps start just basically populating and telling you what's going on. And then you start reading some of the stories, and I'm like, holy cow. Like, I can't believe this team went out and got that guy. I can't believe that guy was willing to come here. I was shocked. It kind of took me a second. I took a step back, and I was like, okay. Like, the Cam Sutton deal, I was kind of like, all right, cool. You got your guy. Let's go. And Cam Sutton's a very good player, right? They gave him years, and they gave him the money that he was looking for. When they brought in Mosley, it's a guy who's coming off an ACL, so they gave him a pretty solid contract, and it was like, here, show us what you can do. It all kind of made sense, right? Graham Glasgow was a 1-year deal, again, prove-it deal, made sense. Like these things all kind of just made sense. Gardner-Johnson coming to the Detroit Lions didn't make any sense. This is a guy who's coming off of a Super Bowl appearance. This is a guy who the market was saying he should be paid this amount of money. He's a guy who was incredibly key to that defense. He's a guy who is a big-time player, and he took a 1-year, $8 million deal to come to Detroit. That, to me, had me, one, scratching my head, but two, a little bit shocked. And I'm like, all right, you have to start looking at this team differently now. This team is no longer those kitty cat Lions, right? They're no longer the meow Lions. This is a team that has some bite. This is a team that has a bit of a roar. This is a team that you now have to actually start looking at as a playoff contender, and I think that should be the expectation going into next year, winning the NFC North and expecting to get a home playoff game. And this is a team that needs and deserves to be in the conversation for playing for the Super Bowl. I've seen some FanDuel odds where they are the 8th rated team as far as odds go. So, like, they're in the mix. This team needs to be taken seriously. And you talked about it when we opened the show. All the pundits are incredibly high on this team. Is it strange to you, or does it feel weird that the Lions put big boy pants on and are conducting themselves like a powerhouse organization? Because, like I said, it took me basically looking at my phone 3 different times and kind of taking that step back and being like, yep, we're here. We are here now. We have a seat at the adults table, right? No longer are we sitting at the kids table on Thanksgiving off in the corner. We are now sitting at the adults table. We deserve to be in the conversation with teams like the 49ers, teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Bills, teams like Dallas, I guess. We deserve to be in conversations with teams like the Eagles. We are there. Now, not saying that we've arrived, but we are there. We are basically down at the far end of the table, and we're trying to work our way up the table to be next to the teams like the Chiefs and the Eagles. But we are now at the table. We have a seat at the big boy table. What's your reaction to all that? Am I kind of coming out of left field as basically a damaged Lions fan, or did you have maybe a similar reaction to this? Like, just, wow, I can't believe they pulled that off.
No, it's great because we're in the conversation to talk about positive things and building a football team the right way. There's hope. There's realistic hope because the things that NFL teams do that are successful, the Lions are doing. Managing the cap well, have a solid starter, have coordinators with experience, have relationships across the league, have defensive linemen that can get to the quarterback, have draft capital, have options, have a stud wide receiver that can be a superstar if the quarterback can throw him the football. So you have options, and you have a head coach who the players want to ball for. I mean, to this day, Darius Slay and Quandre Diggs and Gardner-Johnson, 3 days doesn't go by where they don't spout off regarding how shitty Matt Patricia was. 3 days go by, Matt Patricia took out Gardner-Johnson's knees. 3 days goes by, Darius Slay says Matt Patricia is an ultimate hater and hates his guts and never wants to see him again. 3 days goes by, Quandre Diggs is like, if you hire Matt Patricia to your organization, you're going to go down in flames. So I'm like, thank you, God, yes. Thank you. Every 3 days, one of those guys, the former players, just goes ham on how bad they hated Matt Patricia. And then every 8 hours, you got somebody calling Dan Campbell RoboCop, He-Man, Superman, every superlative in the book. Pretty soon he's going to be called the Big Tuna. He's going to be called all the names in the book that are going to be synonymous with great coaching, So this is great. And players are starting to understand. They have fun there. They win there. And when you go on national television and you pimp slap the Packers and you go out there and you talk shit and you back it up, it's great. And I think for the first time, we can sit back and at least look at the Lions trending upward for the first time with realistic hopes of, remember guys, the Lions only have one single playoff win in the history of our lives. One! And you realize we could probably get that this year, maybe even 2. And to have that be in the conversation where we're not falling out of our chairs laughing and making stupid jokes and stupid memes, at this point, it's the best time of year to be a Lions fan. There's realistic hope. And people are talking about serious stuff for the Detroit Lions, and it's really positive and it's hopeful. And I think for the most part, there's only a handful of people that aren't excited for the upcoming draft and the season. Everybody's thrilled about what's coming up. You'd have to be just a non-sports fan to not want to pay attention to the Lions. The Lions are it. They've stepped up to the marquee, and now they got to perform. And there's a realistic chance NFC North division winners, Detroit Lions in 2023. Put your money down. You have a good chance of collecting.
Doesn't it feel weird saying that? Like, to me, that is, it's so strange, right? And like, it shouldn't be, because everything that they've done to this point, they've conducted themselves like a real organization. And here's the thing. You go back to when Dan Campbell was hired, because he was hired first. And then you go back to when Brad Holmes was hired because he was hired second. And we all kind of sat around and we're like, that's weird. That's not what real organizations do. That's probably not great. But the Lions had a whiteboard, and it had items on it that they wanted from their next coaching staff. And they went out and they conducted these interviews, and you had Dan Campbell's presser, and it was laughed, it was mocked at, it was everything, right? You bite knees, you turn into a wrestling promo, and it's fantastic. But everything that he said in there, this team has essentially emulated on the team. This is a team that shows up, works hard. You punch them in the face, they're going to punch you back. It's a team that's you bite them, they're going to bite you back. This is a team that's going to outwork you regularly. And then you go back to Brad Holmes' press conference, and he talked about him and Dan Campbell basically being of like mind. And thus far to this point, man, I don't know if these guys could do it without each other. I don't know if they would have the same amount of success as fast as they've had it without each other, because everything that Dan Campbell has instilled into this football team, and all the guys and all the pieces that Brad Holmes has gone out and grabbed for this football team through the draft and through free agency, these guys are basically symbiotic with each other. Like, one is the right hand, one is the left hand, and they are working together perfectly. And to me, it is so great to see an organization that has come from so much dysfunction. Like, when we were kids, you had Wayne Fonts, and look, I remember being in I think like third or fourth grade and calling him Cocaine Wayne. Like, third grade, I was like 8. At 8 years old. Like, do you know what cocaine is? You probably don't really have a full grasp on it, but that's what I was calling Wayne Fonts. I was like Cocaine Wayne, because he had all this stuff that took place, right? And then you move into there was obviously Marty Mornhinweg with Taking the Wind. That was a thing. You had a number of coaches. Bobby Ross. You had a number of coaches have their Lions moment. The guy with the pick and the axes, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but like, you had all of that. Then you had the whole Rob Parker thing. This organization just been tormented for years. Then you get into the Schwartz era, and then you basically have Jim Schwartz losing his mind on Thanksgiving when he throws a flag for what shouldn't have been a touchdown, and after that the season was kind of downhill, and you have what took place in Pittsburgh, and it was bananas after that. And then we fast forward to Jim Caldwell, and we felt like we kind of leveled out. We had some normalcy. But Bob Quinn comes in, and he's like, yeah, not good enough. 9-7 is not good enough. But apparently 3-13 was, because he brought Matt Patricia with him. And you've already touched on all the stories that come out about Matt Patricia. Basically going from that darkness. Like, I just recounted 30-plus years of Lions coaching and general managers. Woo. And now we're here.
We're here.
And it feels weird, but it feels so good at the same time. It's absolutely crazy.
So before we transition to NCAA talk and the mess that is everyone's bracket,
bro,
are you willing to shell out some money from your pocket to go see more games this year? Maybe from 1 to 3 to 4?
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Oh, they got you.
Sure.
They got the Jock's cash. Oh, they roped him in. I'm doing the fishing. They got him. They reeled him in. Jock is taking it. Wait. Jock is reaching into his pocket, and you know how tight that is. He's reaching
super tight
into his pocket.
Cobwebs in that pocket.
And he's pulling out a credit card, and he's saying, take my money. So that means that is the stamp that the Lions are doing great. He's not even going to try to pedal for free tickets. He's going to pay and show up there at Ford Field more than once this year. So, guys, you did your job. You got Jock from Detroit Sports Podcast to shell out the cash, and that, in the end, is the ultimate win for the Lions. They got you to pay. I mean, what else can you ask for? Everybody wants to pay.
I've got buddies who do a yearly trip. They go see a Lions game. They'll go out of town for it. And I think this year they're talking about New Orleans, or they're talking about possibly, I think, are they playing Tampa Bay this year? So I think it's New Orleans and Tampa Bay, if I remember the schedule correctly. So, like, I might do one of those. And, like, that's going to be a bit of a chunk of change. Sheesh. So obviously reaching into the pockets there to go do that will be a thing. So, I mean, that's kind of how high I am on this team, right? I'm willing to go into enemy territory to watch this team because I believe in this team. Now, granted, the two teams I named, I think the Lions are better than them, but that's neither here nor there. I'm just telling you kind of where I'm at. I'm willing to go. I'm willing to travel. I'm willing to pay that expense and go see this team at somebody else's field because I think this team is on the move, man. I think this team is headed in the right direction, which is awesome.
All right, interesting. Another team headed in a great direction, headed east to Madison Square Garden, the Michigan State Spartans. Great news out of the first weekend, surprising me. I don't even think I had them winning the first game, so I don't remember where I put them. I think one and done or losing the first game, so it's great. They've turned it around, and the guard play has been spectacular in a topsy-turvy world with the NCAA tournament where Purdue, a number 1 seed, loses, a number 1 seed that many people didn't believe in anyway. They lose in the first round. Another one has also fallen. You only got 2 number 1 seeds left. The bracket is appealing to the likes of Spartan supporters when you see you might have to just face Kansas State and Tennessee. 2 teams where if you can figure out 3-point shooting, you have an opportunity to have a lot of success. But this tournament's been crazy. It's just, for me, to be honest with you, I don't put a lot of thought into the bracket because I have no clue what the hell's going on. How the hell are you going to predict and project the Purdue's going to fall in the first round? It's crazy. I did pick a lot of 12 seeds and 10 seeds, but they were just not the right ones. So it happens. It goes down that way. I don't know exactly where I'm at. I think I'm like 4th or 5th or, in the middle of the pack along the way. But that goes to show you, college basketball in the tournament with the transfer portal has leveled the playing field. Now, to me, as a fan of the Spartans, it's great because you have a better chance of winning, but it also upsets my anger because you should be dominant. If you're a great coach in the landscape, Tom Izzo should have been dominating and picking up the scraps with an NCAA that hasn't really been much the last couple years. But that's why I'm so mad at the Spartans, is because they've also become middle of the road. But in the end, all I can say is the competitiveness of the tournament makes it even more must watch than it ever has because nobody really has a clue what the hell's going on. True blue bloods are gone. It's a wild scene. You have a team winning over a number 1 seed by 10, only then to get blown out in the second half. Wild comebacks, upsets galore. You have a tournament that's topsy-turvy and really entertaining. And when you have a team that, your alma mater's there, it makes it much more fun. But I have no clue because if you would have told me Michigan State would have only made 2 3-pointers against Marquette, I would have said, yeah, they're getting blown out. It's another bad MSU game. But their defense has stepped it up, which has been a calling card. It's been amazing. And you're going to need it. But you're going to need your offense to step it up, Michigan State. Joey Hauser, A.J. Hoggard, Walker, all the players have to step it up and make threes.
Can they make free throws?
And have a good game? I'm excited to see what it looks like Thursday. Tonight, after you guys listen to this podcast, tune in, check it out. Michigan State's in the Sweet 16, baby, and that's where they deserve to be, with a real chance to maybe get to the Elite Eight. And that's all you can ask for. It puts the Spartans in the spotlight, and for a community that needs it based on tragedy, it's nice to shed light on the positive story that is Michigan State and things like that. So I'll take it. Go green, and it makes the tournament really fun. I have no clue how it's going to shake out. None at all.
I think the one issue that Michigan State really needs to get corrected ASAP. During clutch moments, you got to be able to hit free throws.
Yes.
You've got to be able to connect and nail the easy points when they're given to you. And I think that's kind of been the one thing that has scared me in both these games is you'll send guys to the line, it'll be a 1-and-1, they'll miss the front end, or they'll need to basically hit 1 or 2 free throws here or there in a clutch spot. And it's like they're gripping a little bit too tight. And it's just like you could really put this game out of reach. You could really distance yourself in this game and just take a commanding lead and then just salt it away. And just the execution on the free throws is just, it's frustrating to me. In my brackets, I have them going to I've got them making it to the Final Four. And it's one of those things where I just really didn't believe in what I seen in that East bracket. Look, was fading. Duke, not the same Duke team. Kentucky, I don't necessarily think it's the same Kentucky team. I just felt like Michigan State had a chance to get hot and get on a bit of a run. And look, Izzo knows what he's got with his teams, right? Izzo knows what he has there, what he's working with, and he knows how to motivate these teams. And he had a quote the other day where he basically said, like, one game we're really good offensively, one game we're really good defensively. If we could just put it all together, and we'd have something really special. And it really feels as though this team might be able to get it all together here in this next round of games. So I've got them going to the Final Four. I think they make a bit of a run. I have faith in this team. Just to tell you how chaotic this bracket has been, I don't even know if the seeds matter anymore.
No,
right?
Yeah.
When you have 16s beating ones and you've got 15s beating twos, what feels almost regularly, I don't know if seeding matters anymore. But all that being said, I think everybody's bracket was busted after day 2, which was fun. Like that's the most fun part about doing a bracket, right? Everybody takes a guess, and it's usually the girl who's like, I like the colors, or I like the mascot, and they're the ones who usually wins. Nobody knows anything. So it's one of the greatest tournaments for a reason. It's a lot of fun. We'll see kind of what happens here as these games unfold. Do you see this team making a deep run? Do you see this team getting past the Elite Eight, possibly making into the Final Four?
I could see a win against Kansas State, but a loss against Tennessee. I think Tennessee's strong. They got a lot of speed, a lot of opportunity, good transition on defense. So I just need, really the key in the end is probably going to come down to Joey Hauser. If he can score 25 points, then you could compete with anybody because that defense should be able to play very well. And Tom Izzo does really well on those days where the one day off, he's got his scouts and his other assistant coaches scouting so well that I hope they get maybe lucky and get the lesser seed. But Kansas State, focus on defense, play well, no offensive lulls, and you'll give yourself the best opportunity, man, and it's great. Tom Izzo deserves it. I mean, 25 years in the postseason, can't take it for granted. I mean, 25 straight years, we've enjoyed it with a title, multiple Final Fours. You know, a guy like me wants more, always. But in the end, I'm just going to enjoy it for what it's been. I've enjoyed the games, and that's the way it's going to be. Of course, I'll complain when they don't play to their optimal abilities, but in the end, moving forward, there's a class that people are kind of talking highly about coming in. So let's go, Michigan State. Show what you're about, and maybe Tyson Walker will go out there and ball out in front of the home crowd, obviously being from New York. So it's a good time, man. It's a good time to be a Spartans. So how are the Wolverines doing? Did they get bounced in the tournament? Oh, yeah, they did. They got bounced again
bounced in the NIT.
In the NIT in an epic fashion with a collapse, man. I've never seen a coach like Juwan kind of it sometimes is like that, where a coach sometimes just doesn't advance in the X's and O's department. And for whatever reason, the Wolverines were not able to take that next step in regards to closing out games. And I think that'll be turned around, hopefully, in the coming years, because
I like how you have a little bit more faith than me. I think
you're off the bandwagon for sure.
Yeah, I think Juwan is cooked. I don't think he has. Look, I think he is a guy who can sit down in your living room, can talk to you, can talk the game of basketball with you, right? He can recruit you. He can bring you in. When it comes to the actual X's and O's, I don't know if he's cut out for it. I don't know if he's made up for it. I don't believe he is. I think what you've seen with this class that he's just recently had, I think it kind of shows you the holes in his game, right? He doesn't have a team that is mentally tough enough. It's one thing you can always say about Izzo's teams. They're almost always mentally tough enough. I think Juwan's teams are mentally tough enough, and I don't think they've got the closing mentality. You know, the game gets within 1 or 2 points, sometimes 1 or 2 buckets. There's usually a guy you can just get the ball to, and he turns it on. He could take over a game. Used to be Trey Burke for the Wolverines. Nick Stauskas was a guy who could hit big shots for you. Jordan Poole's a guy. Isaiah Livers was a guy. And I don't know who that guy is on this basketball team. Like, Hunter Dickinson dries up and goes away in big moments. He's inconsistent. Jet Howard, I think he wants to be the guy, but he hasn't shown that he's the guy. Kobe Bufflin, maybe, but like, again, Can your coach draw something up where you come off of a pick or where you come off of a screen and you can roll out and get an open three? I don't know if your head coach has the ability to draw that play up. So there's always something that's kind of surrounding this team, right? Whether it's Juwan acting a fool on the court, or whether it's players wearing masks going into games, or whether they're talking crap going onto podcasts, and it just there's always something, right? There's always the stink with this team, and it comes from the head down, man. And that head is Juwan Howard. So
gotta be better.
I'm out.
Gotta be better, and maybe it could be starting this season. Could be the signal that his tenure could be on the downswing, but we shall see. Michigan State Lions, they're on the upswing, and so is the Detroit Sports Podcast. Thanks, cuz. Podcasting time is over. What a beautiful hour of breaking down free agency, the Lions, the Spartans, the wacky world of the NCAA. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Anywhere that you enjoy audio broadcasts in your podcast, make sure you type in Detroit Sports Podcast, and our content will find you as we break down Michigan, Michigan State, the Lions, Tigers, Wings, and the Pistons. It's a great time, cuz. Podcasting time is now over. We look forward to checking you guys out on the latest edition next week of Doc and Jock.